Hi everyone, this is a video explaining the basics of percents. So let's get started. A percent is a ratio based on 100. So when you say 25 out of 100, you're talking about a fraction 25 over 100, or you could also be talking about 25%. You'll notice that the percent sign itself actually has the number 100 in it. The slash is the 1, and then the 2 zeros, and the 2 zeros make up the percent sign. So if you're looking at a picture of something, all you have to do is count the number of squares that are shaded out of 100, and you know what percent it is. You can change fractions into equivalent fractions with the denominator of 100. So for example, if you have 1/4, since 4 can go into 125 times, we can change this into a fraction whose denominator is 100. 4 times 25 is 100. So you just do 1 times 25, and 1 times 25 is 25. And so now we're back to our 25 out of 100, or our fraction 25 hundredths that we had up here. So that equals 25%. Easy schmeezy. Decimals can easily be changed into percents simply by moving the decimal point in the decimal 2 places to the right and adding a percent sign. So the way we're going to remember that we're moving the decimal 2 places to the right is because in the percent sign we have 1, 2 zeros. And we're going to know we're going to move the decimal point to the right because when we have a decimal like 3.82, we're going to change that into a percent by moving the decimal point 2 places to the right, and since we're moving it to since we have to put the percent sign on the right side, we're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right, so that equals 382%. If we have the decimal point 0.625, and we want to change that into a percent, all we need to do, again, is move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Oops, I thought I changed that to a different color. Let's try that again. 2 places to the right. And so it's going to end up between the 6 and the 2, since we moved it to the right, and we're going to put the percent sign afterwards. And so it would be 6.25%. Easy enough. If you're changing a percent into a decimal, you remove the percent sign, so that's going to go away. We're going to take the decimal point from where it is and move it away from the percent sign we just took away, move it 2 places to the left, and so this is going to equal 0.382. And same kind of thing for 540%. Use a different color, better not use that color. For 540%, we're going to take this away. So when we take it away, we're going to move away, and a whole number, the decimal point is on the right-hand side. That's what makes it whole, because all these numbers are on the whole number side. We're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and that, as a decimal, equals 5.4, which should make sense, because 540% means we have 500%. So 500% are 5 wholes, and then 40% is 40 out of 100, or 4/10. Same thing. Okay, great. Move on to the next slide. Changing a percent into a fraction is super duper easy. You basically just remove the percent sign. You put 100 underneath whatever the number is that is the percent, and you put it in lowest terms. So since I can divide both of these by 4, divide the numerator by 4, and I get 11. Divide the denominator by 4, and I get 25. So I end up with 11 25ths. We can do the 525% one equally as easy. We take away the percent sign. We put 525 over 100. This time, again, this is something that's more than 100%. So it's going to end up being something that's more than 1 whole. So 525 over 100 is 5 25/100ths, which is the same thing as 5 1/4. And that's all there is to it. Changing a fraction, changing a percent into a fraction. So far, it hasn't been too challenging. The next part is where it gets a little bit challenging. So to change a fraction into a percent, well, that's a pretty bad line. To change a fraction into a percent, we have two options. Option number 1 is to change to an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 100 and then write it as a percent. This is what I showed you in one of the first slides. So let's start with a fraction like, 13/20. Okay, now 13/20. I know I can use this because 20 can divide evenly into 100. So since 20 times 5 equals 100, I'm going to make 100 my denominator because percents are all out of 100. Per means out of, and cent is a prefix, or in this case, the root of the word that stands for 100. So 20 times 5 is 100. So what I do in the denominator, since I'm making an equivalent fraction, I do in the numerator. And 13 times 5 is 65. So now I've made it into a fraction whose denominator is 100. And now I have to change that into a percent. And so that equals 65%. So that was option number 1. That only happens if the denominator of the fraction you're given divides into 100 evenly. But what do you do if it doesn't? Like 2/3. The fraction 2/3. 3 times nothing equals 100. 3 times no whole number. So we're going to change this fraction into a decimal first, and then we're going to change the decimal into a percent. So if you recall from the fractions unit, to change a fraction into a decimal, we have to do a division problem, the one that's suggested by the fraction. So this says 2 divided by 3. So top in the box, 2 divided by 3. So you should expect that because this fraction is less than 1, 3 won't go into 2 evenly. So I'm going to have to add a decimal point, bring it up into the denominator, add a 0. 3 divides into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18, with a remainder of 2. And that remainder right here is the exact same thing as the number that we started out here. So that basically means that the 6's are going to continue infinitely. It's going to be a repeating decimal. And I don't have to keep writing them all, but it's going to be to my advantage to write some of them, because now I have to take this decimal that I have and change it into a percent, which means that I have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So I'm going to get 66.6. The 6 continues to repeat, percent. And I can barely fit that in there. Okay, you get the idea. Okay, now one thing you cannot do is write 66 with a line over it, percent. Whole numbers don't repeat. This would mean I'd have to keep writing 6's after that, and if I keep writing 6's after that, then I'm going to not end up with 66. I'm going to end up with 6 badrillion, 666 fliplillion, And so some ridiculous numbers. I'm just making those up. So this you may not do. So we got to get rid of that. You may only have 66.6%. And the 6 can only repeat in the decimals. Okay. So we just changed one of the fractions into a percent. Sometimes they're going to end. Sometimes they're not going to end. You just have to divide them out. If you have something that's bigger than a whole amount, like 10 ninths, you do top in the box again. So we're going to put the 10 in the numerator. 10 on the inside as the dividend. The 9 on the outside is the divisor. And now 9 can divide into 10 one time. So again, it would make sense that this is going to be one whole automatically, because 10 ninths is more than 1. I'm not going to do long division. I'm going to do short division. I'm going to add a decimal point. I'm going to add another 0. 1 times 9 is 9. There's 1 left over. So I'm just going to write it next to my 0. 9 goes into 10 one time again with 1 left over. And if I add another 0, you're going to see that the pattern continues, and I'm going to end up with 1.1 repeating. So I don't even need this part right here. Let me just erase that part. I don't need those. Okay. So how do I change this into a percent now? I take the decimal point. I move it 2 places to the right. 1, 2. I need to fill in this spot with a 1. And I need to have at least 1 after the decimal point that's going to repeat. So this is 111.1 repeating percent. Okay. Some common fractions and their percents. These are things that it's good to have memorized. It's not imperative, but then you don't have to do the work all the time. So most people know that half of something is 50%. A lot of people know that a fourth of something is 25%, because a fourth is half of a half, and so a fourth would be half of 50%, which is 25%. 3/4 then would be the half and the 1/4 put together, or 75%. Like 3/4 of $1, 3/4 out of 4/4 is 75 cents. That'd be 75%. 1 is 100%. The whole thing, a whole thing, is 100%. And then 1/3 is 33 1/3%, or 33.3 repeating percent. 2/3 is double that, or 66 2/3, or 66.6 repeating percent. Just some common fractions and percents to know. It's not like you have to do it, but it'll save you some work. And I've already done a couple of examples, but as you know, percents that are greater than 100 represent more than one whole. Mixed numbers are more than 100%, and you change those percents into fractions or decimals the normal way, following the process that I outlined before. If you have a percent that's less than 1, that basically means less than 1 out of 100. So for example, 0.2% means less than 1 out of 100. This means 0.2 out of 100. So let's see what that looks like as a decimal. 0.2 out of 100. Well, the bad thing is you can't have a decimal in a fraction. So it's really easy to take care of that. You can just move this decimal over 1 place to the right. Oops. You can move it, and then you have to do the same thing here. Move the decimal over 1 place to the right. And so this becomes 20 over 1,000. So 0.2% is 20 out of 1,000. 20 out of 1,000. Okay? And that is basically it. Hope you can figure it out as you do your practice. See you next time. Before I completely go away, I made a mistake here. I want to apologize here. This 0 does not belong. So it should be 2 out of 1,000. Let's get rid of that. So 0.2 becomes 2 out of 1,000, not 20 out of 1,000. 2 out of 1,000. This 20 out of 1,000 would be 2 out of 100, and that's not right. Sorry about that.